Android updates can be hard to explain, so I guess Uncle Sony wants to explain it for us. Hey guys, so I think Android's kind of notoriously known for not getting its updates out to every single phone it runs on at the same time. So while something like the latest version of iOS pretty much comes to every iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch at the same time, Android tends to be more scattered around because different manufacturers take up their phones and they all want to have their own skins on them, whether it be TouchWiz or various manufacturers, what they want to put, different content, how they want the camera interface to look, how they want the browser interface to look, and so on and so forth. And so I always knew that this was a big part of why Android updates took so long to come out on each phone. Even like on flagships, a new version of Android can come out in a time like October, November, but the manufacturers, they won't see, or consumers won't get the update until January of next year because insert name of manufacturer wants to put their own skin on it, whether it be Samsung, LG, Huawei, HTC, so many others. So that's why it took so long, and Sony actually came out with an infographic explaining it, and you're actually going to come along with me in this video to check out this infographic, and I've already read through it, but but I'm going to explain this all to you. Okay, so I'm going to read to you guys what Sony calls the journey of an Android software rollout, and I'll give you a brief explanation of each step as we go along. So, phase one is bring up. So the first part, the platform development kit. A few weeks before a new version of Android is released, Google sends us a platform development kit. This is a collection of source files and more that lets us develop, optimize, and test. So basically, this is when Google brings Sony the new version of Android, and Sony tests it out to see what kind of new features it has, how it looks, and I think at this stage they were considering how can we adapt this, how could we at Sony put our own spin on it so it's our own corporate version of this app, whether it be the browser or the camera app, any others. And so from there, step two, build the foundations. Once a new Android version is released, the real work begins. Which, that sounds kind of sketchy because it sounds like, does this mean that Sony actually starts prepping up their own version of the new version of the Android operating system after it's released? I mean, you could argue maybe Google is making them do this so that nobody at Sony will leak any new features that Google hasn't talked about, but still, I kind of feel that's a roadblock for them getting the new update out to their customers as fast as possible. And it says the first job, get the new software onto our system. I think that's self-explanatory. 3. HAL, not HAL 9000, but Sony says HAL is the hardware abstraction layer and is about getting all the different chips to work with the new software. We don't use exactly the same components as Qualcomm uses, so this is work that we need to do ourselves. So basically adapting it to Sony's own hardware to get the new version of Android to work. I mean, I would imagine that, even though, the processor can come from Qualcomm, there's probably other components they have to get to work, like flash chips, the camera, because I know Sony likes to use their own cameras on their smartphones, and so many other components they have to get to working. So I think that's what they're referring to. 4 is implement the basics. Next on the software engineer to-do list, enabling basic smartphone functionalities, phone calls, messaging, and internet connectivity. So basically getting the new version of Android to work with Sony's own phone call, messaging, and when they say internet connectivity, I think they're referring to, making it work with the Wi-Fi a connection on their phones. Number 5, Sonyfication. Weird word. Next up are the Sony-specific editions, or rather a continuation. At this stage, we also integrate our own feature upgrades such as customized graphics and UI, plus improved features including the lock screen, contacts, music, movies, photo album, camera, smart stamina, Xperia assist, and email. So I think at this stage they're looking at Android's own. I mean, obviously with things like the lock screen, replacing the Android lock screen with Sony's own, and then they're also, making their own custom interfaces with Android's own apps, like things like the contacts, the photo album, a different camera interface than what Google uses, and so on and so forth. Number 6, testing times. We're ready to give this version of Android to people within Sony. It will be working well for daily use, but with functionality missing and stability issues. Feedback from these testers help us identify any major problems. So basically giving it to Sony employees to basically be the beta testers of their version of the new Android release. 7. Even more testing times. In parallel, we carry out lab tests and source feedback from users outside of Sony. Stability and power are the focus of our testing year. Once we are happy, it's time for us to submit for various certificates. So basically, I think this is when Sony gives the new version of the Android operating system with their touches, like basically road testing it, trying it out in the city, in their social lives, just to see if it works in, an everyday work day or an everyday person's life. So I think that's what's going on. Okay, so phase 2 is certification and approval. Number 8, hitting high standards. The crucial period is about ensuring everything meets tech standards like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. The priority is to ensure quality and performance across all devices. So regardless of what you use, regardless of what operating system, whether you use any brand's tablet, computer, or smartphone, you guys know every once in a while an update comes along and suddenly you're having issues connecting to your Wi-Fi network, or maybe even issues connecting to your Bluetooth headphones and speakers. So I think this is the part where Sony is testing out their take on the new Android operating system just to make sure that their phones can connect to a Wi-Fi network or Bluetooth speakers. So, kind of more quality. But I know a lot of you guys have experienced those kind of updates where, hey, I can't get onto my house Wi-Fi network, or hey, my Bluetooth earbuds are not connecting to my phone. So they're trying to prevent that. Number 9, hello operator. Some of our operator partners may require specific versions of the software, which is yet another roadblock to getting the new version of Android out to Sony customers. Operators help us test these custom versions and give us approval once everything is working. So, operator partners, I think, refers to carriers, like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, Vodafone, and so on and so forth. So, I know, carriers, they want manufacturers to put, hey, we want to have Verizon. I don't know if they still use VCAS, but we want to have like a Verizon or named features. AT&T wants their own features, and Sprint wants to have their own features. So I think at this point, this is when the carriers tell Sony, hey, we want our own version of these apps on our phones, to coincide with your launch. So I think this is why, even down to the carrier, when a new version of Android comes out for some phones, you may notice that T-Mobile customers who have the exact same phone you do, maybe you're like a Verizon customer, like why are they getting the update first and we Verizon and AT&T customers are getting it later? This is pretty much that reason. Number 10, launch. Once all certifications and approvals are in place, we can release the latest version of Android into the wild for Sony users to enjoy, just as Sony describes it here. And 11, time to relax. Not quite. After release, there's no time to put our feet up. We monitor Sony support forums and social media for user feedback. The feedback is useful when planning firmware updates we release between major Android upgrades. So that is pretty much the infographic that Sony has put out, explaining all the steps they have to do when a new Android version is released, and also explaining the couple reasons why it takes so long. Namely, I would say step number 2, build the foundations, because it says here once a new Android version is released, the real work begins. So I'm guessing that means that they don't really start working on it until the new version of Android is released. And step number 9, the different carriers require different versions of the operating system, and I'm also thinking that different carriers want their own versions they want their own apps on the phone. So I think those are 2 reasons why it takes so long. So I kind of just wanted to end this video talking about how I still really wish that the new version of Android came out to more and more devices at the same time, rather than having to keep users waiting, and where the new version of Android comes out the fall of 1 year, but some users won't be able to receive the update until early the next year because the manufacturer of the phone wants to put their own features on that. Maybe if Google could let Sony start working on the new version of Android as soon as they get the new version themselves, rather than waiting until it's released, maybe it can come out sooner. I mean, yes, I know. I think the reason is because Google doesn't want maybe a shady employee at Sony leaking some new details about, oh hey, there's this new feature that Google hasn't talked about yet. I'm pretty sure by the time they send them to Sony, they already announced, hey, we're coming out with Android O or Android P. It's in the public eye. They can still, they should be able to start working on it once they get the new operating system. And maybe carriers could, rather than shipping their versions of apps like around the same time as the update, maybe they can do something where they can send new versions of their apps to, without having to go for the software update. Maybe it could be like through the Google Play Store, or maybe they'll get a message saying, hey, we at AT&T or we at Sprint have a new version of these apps and we're going to download them to your new phone. So I just think it's kind of stupid, and I think that could also be a way where, rather than having to go have these different kinds of Android skins, maybe it can become more of a thing where these different manufacturers are sending out their own custom versions of apps rather than an entire operating system skin. And even though, yes, I know, manufacturers will put in their own versions of the new Android features to try to hold people over. I remember my first smartphone actually was an LG Ultimate 2, an Android KitKat phone. And the thing about that phone is it actually had a split screen feature where you could actually use the video app, the notes, or the calendar, or the calculator, or even a browser window while you're still using another app. And LG put that in obviously because, as far as I know, Android KitKat didn't have its own native split screen feature. So even though, yes, I know manufacturers will try to put their own versions of those features to hold people over, I still think it doesn't make any sense that these users have to wait for, these features in, Android's own proper operating system update. And it's not that Android Pie has, the most amazing new features, but it still has some pretty cool tricks, like how you can do cut, copy, and paste from the multitasking screen, and how it's got new features like slices, where if you type in, let's say, the Lyft app in Google Now, you actually get options to, tell Lyft, hey, I want to go to work, or I want to take a Lyft car to go home. So I really hope that Sony and other manufacturers of Android phones can consider these new things in the future. So, but please tell me your thoughts below if you think these ideas are good, or do you have any ideas that I didn't even consider for my own video. Please let me know down below in the comments. If you have any articles that could tell me about features I didn't consider, or different things these manufacturers could do, please let me know in the comments. You can also email me ideas for videos. And this has been Blood Moon Bobby, and thank you all for watching. Hey guys, be sure to like this Blood Moon Bobby video if you enjoyed it. Please share this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. Be sure to ring the notification bell to be notified about my latest upload. Follow me on my social media pages at Blood Moon Bobby to find out about what I'll be covering next and for more of my opinions. Thanks for watching.